although I was here at the conference 5 years ago and 2 years ago on Zoom, maybe not many of you know much about me, or maybe you don't remember that I was here at all. So my name is Willians, Alcala. I was born in Venezuela. Had the privilege of being saved there and being received into Assembly Fellowship there. And I'm so glad to see so many people here who are connected to the work in that country, even sharing the platform with Brother Craig. That first time ever that I met him. I remember his father going to my home assembly in Maracay and speaking about El Salvador and mentioning about his children. So for me, it's a pleasure to be with Brother Craig and others here as well, and Mr. Sauer, the grandfather. I didn't preach with him, so that was a long time ago. So I just remember when I was a little boy seeing Mr. Sauer, Don Santiago, at the conferences and so on. So several years ago, 18 years ago, my wife and I went to Australia. Well, no, my wife is Australian. She grew up in Colombia. So I'm very sincerely grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today and trying to help a little bit with the conference. But we're here to hear the Word of God. So let's read, please, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, from verse 11. Just a verse here, a couple of verses, a way of introduction. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11 and verse 12. It says, "Now all these things happened unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall. These things happened unto them for examples." If you read the context here, you will see that the writer, Paul, is talking about the experience of the children of Israel and all the troubles, the problems, the sins that happened unto them in their own experience. And after talking about all what happened with them, you see, for example, verse number 7, "Neither be ye idolaters." Verse number 8, "Neither let us commit fornication." Verse number 9, "Neither let us tempt the Lord." Christ. Number 10, "Neither murmur ye." But then he stopped and said, "Now all these things happen unto them to be an example unto you." Why? "Let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall." So Paul is saying, we are made out of the same material as them. We are not better than those that have failed. And if we think that we're standing, we need to take heed, to pay attention, so that we are not going to fall, and that we might keep close to the Lord. In the will of the Lord, my exercise for today and tomorrow will be in relation to a lovely Bible character that I think that so many times we are like him. I am like him. Peter. Simon Peter. And this afternoon, I would like to take some lessons in regard to the denial of Peter. When Peter denied the Lord, and try to learn some lessons from what happened unto him, because these things happened unto Peter to be an example unto us, so that we might take heed. And that we might, of course, be careful as well. And then tomorrow, in the will of the Lord, I would like to try to speak about Peter's restoration. So we are going to learn from his mistakes. And then tomorrow we are going to learn about his restoration. I'm so glad that we have a God of restoration. And we trust that the Lord will help us. Restoration is not only for someone that has fallen into sin. And it's a way. Of course, that is part of it. But I believe that all of us, we need to be constantly being restored unto the presence of the Lord. And that we might get into the routine that we are fine. But we need our hearts to be restored in our devotion and appreciation to the Lord, And that is something that we need to do all the time, constantly. So, as I said before, a lovely character, Peter. And I think that so many times we are so quick to criticize him and to point our fingers unto Peter and to say, look, Peter did this and he did that, and look at all his mistakes. But I don't know if you got that expression here, that when you are pointing your finger to someone, you got 3 fingers pointing to yourself. So you need to be very, very careful. So instead of looking these lessons in a negative way, I would like to think it in this way. Imagine Peter, a believer that went through that experience, denying the Lord, and later being restored, and later being useful to the Lord, and then after many years, and then we have the opportunity to talk to him personally, and then we can ask him, excuse me, brother, do you have any advice for me? Do you have any advice for new believers, for young believers, for all believers? What can you tell us from your experience? Can you give us some advice? So that's the way that I would like to see lessons from Peter's denial. First of all, let's go to the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 26. The Gospel according to Matthew chapter 26, and let's read from verse number 30. Matthew chapter 26, and we are going to read there from verse number 30. That's after the Passover meal and the institution of the Lord's Supper. It says here, and when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. Then said Jesus unto them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Peter answered to him, though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended. Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee, that this night, before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. You know that when he's addressing Peter this time, he's been speaking directly unto him. Verse 35, Peter said unto him, though I should die with thee, yet I will not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples. You know very well that Peter that very night denied that he knew him 3 times, exactly as the Lord said. So if we could ask Peter, what can we learn about that? I'm sure that he will say, well, my first advice to you is put your trust in the Lord, not in yourself. So that's the first lesson that I think that we need to learn from him. Put your trust in the Lord, not in yourself. I will read to you very briefly the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5. You know the verse said, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Trust in the Lord. That sounds very simple enough for us to try to understand. But to put it into practice is not easy, because our nature, our flesh, wants to make me believe that I am good, that I don't need anybody's help, that I'm doing just fine, that maybe I'm just, look at me, I'm trying to do my best. So Peter sincerely believed that he had the strength to remain firm for the Lord in front of anybody. And later he got scared in front of a girl, a young girl. He had every intention, I believe. I think that he meant every word. I believe that his love for the Lord was sincere, and yet he was trusting in himself. And he was saying, even if the other ones, look at this other guy here now, even if James and the other one and John, even if they deny you, even if they will be willing to get away from thee, I will never do it. Might the Lord preserve us. Might the Lord preserve me. that we may understand. I cannot trust in myself. Our heart, the Bible says, is desperately wicked. That our intentions, if we are guided by my own desire, and something that I have tried to learn in my Christian life, is that you can live your Christian life only two ways: to please the Lord or to please yourself. To try to do what the Lord wants me to do, or to try to do what I want to do that makes me happy. And I don't need to tell you, not only to the young Christian, but all of us, I believe. It's the same in Australia, here in Canada, I believe. That we always want to try to do what makes me happy. People said, I go to that place because I like it. I feel okay going to that place. I want to do this because I like it. That makes me happy. I don't want to do that because I don't feel well when I do it. In other words, trying to do what makes me feel well. And Peter will say there, no, I will never do it. I'm strong enough. Lord, I am here. I will not do it. Again, this doesn't take long just to let in our minds to be reminded of this. We need to trust in the Lord. That our strength is only found in the person of the Lord, and that is vital for us to depend on Him and to put everything into His hands, that we are not going to follow that example. To keep, that involves a lot of things, of course, but one of them, I just point to that one, is to keep humble. When we are full of ourselves, when we believe that we can do it, if the voice of the enemy trying to take us to lean on our own understanding and not on the person of the Lord. One advice that I received in Caracas, the assembly where I was when I went to university, some people here have been there, El Cementerio. One of the elders said to me, Williams, something, never forget, keep humble. Keep humble. There are many believers that have been with great capacity, but they are not humble. That ruined everything. Put your trust in the Lord, not in yourself. So many people point to self-confidence here from Peter, that he was trusting in his own strength, on his own wisdom. But of course, that was one of the steps that took him to denying the Lord later. But let's have a look at the second one here. In the same chapter 26, but this time verse 37. It says, and he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be sorrowful. That's the Gethsemane, of course, the Gethsemane, very heavy. And then says he unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me. And he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto the disciples, and findeth them asleep, and says unto Peter, so he addressed Peter and said, what? Could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. So the Lord said unto Peter and the other two there, tarry ye here and watch with me. And when the Lord went to see them, all of them were asleep, but the Lord talked directly to Peter, because he was the one that said before, I will never fail the Lord. I will be always be, in front of everybody else. I am better than the other disciple. I said, what, Peter? Were not you able to watch with me even for 1 hour? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. If I ask Peter, what did you learn? What was the lesson that you learned? What did you want to tell us from that lesson? I'm sure that he might say something like, always obey the Lord, even when it is difficult. Why? The Lord gave him an order. Watch with me. He didn't say, please, if you want to, if that is not too much trouble, Peter, can you, wait a couple of minutes, watch with me, a prayerful attitude. He heard what the Lord was saying in the upper room about his betrayal. He knew that the Lord was about to be taken and being crucified. The Lord spoke about his coming kingdom before that. So Peter knew very well what the Lord was trying to tell him. I said, I need you to stay with me. I need you to pray with me. Please watch with me. That was an order. But you know what? That was a long day for Peter. He was exhausted, as the Lord himself was exhausted. And the other ones, they were tired. So much happened. The preparation for the Passover. All the events that happened in the upper room. All the intrigue about the Jews and the priests. Even the days before. The whole week. From the very moment that they came into Jerusalem and went to Bethany. Backward and forward several times. They were exhausted. That was very difficult. Maybe Peter said, well, I will watch with the Lord, but I'm just going to close my eyes for a little while. Yeah? And then I will keep going later. It was very, very difficult. And I believe that the lesson that Peter will tell me, he said, well, you know what? The Lord gave me an order. He asked me something, but it was too hard. It was too hard. I have many excuses that I could give. So please, obey the Lord, even when it is difficult. Obeying the Lord when it is easy, that is no big deal. We don't show obedience, we don't show our love for the Lord when things are going well all the time. Going to the meeting when you finish work at 3 p.m. maybe, and you get home and you have time for a rest and have a meal and get ready and prepare to go to the meeting, and you went to the meeting. Fantastic. Well, great, you did it. But if you were working until 6:30, 7 p.m., wherever you have to be, and you know that there is a meeting that night, and you can say, I'm tired. Too much traffic. We don't have any visiting speaker, only the same brethren in the assembly. Why should I go? I think I will stay home. I will ask someone what was the message about. When it's hard, is when the soldier in the battlefield really shows their loyalty to their country and to their superiors. Peter, again, he might have said so many things there. But he said, no, look, I'm so sad. Because I was not being watchful that night. Because I was not standing there with my Lord in prayer. He was in agony when he was praying. He was there. He desired the company. He wanted me to be with him, to be alert. And later I deny him. Look, we are so blessed, of course, in countries like Australia and Canada, I believe, so much that we might be grateful for and really enjoy being over there and being here now with you. But I think that we sometimes need to focus that my Christian life is not going to depend on my well-being all the time, but that being there when you are tired, when maybe you don't feel like going, when maybe you might believe that you are not going to get much because you might think that, is when you might have an effort and do it. Why? Because for Peter, the real reason for being there, alert, awake, praying, what was it? You know it. The Lord himself. That was the reason. He asked me. He's there. I want to be with him. And once again, obedience, and you know this point here is about obedience, is the only biblical way in which we Christians prove that we love him. That's what the Bible says. He said, if you love me, what did he say? Keep my commandments. So in other words, love for the Lord is measured in the way that we are in obedience to what he is doing. So if you say that you love the Lord, but you don't want to do something that you know that you should be doing, that is completely against what the Lord is expecting from every one of us. I love him. I want to obey his word. You cannot never pray for the Lord to guide you to do something that is against his word. Lord, shall I marry an unbeliever? Lord, shall I leave the assembly to go to another place? Lord, shall I do this or do that we know that is against his word? You cannot pray about it, because when I hear someone saying, I pray about it and I feel well, I had peace. I say, but what about the word? The Lord said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Obedience. So obedience even when things are going difficult. Even when things are not easy for me. Even when you have to go the extra mile. Even when you have to put a little bit of an extra effort. Is when we really are showing that we love him. So that, I believe, is the second lesson. Normally people put it in the negative way. So we see the self-confidence of Peter, the disobedience of Peter. But I want to point to the advice that he can give us in regard to the lesson from his falling. Let's go to the Gospel of Mark now, please. Yeah, the next gospel, chapter 14. You know that each one of the four gospel gives details that are not presented in the other ones in different events, including Peter's denial. But look at the Mark Gospel, chapter 14 and verse 54. Chapter 14, verse 54. It says there, and Peter followed him afar off, even into the palace of the high priest. And he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. There are two things here. Peter following the Lord afar off, and secondly, Peter sitting with the servants of the high priest and warming up himself with them. But the third piece of advice that I believe that Peter could give us is keep close to the Lord all the time. Why? Because here says that he was following him afar off. We might think of many reasons because of that. It was dangerous to be close to him. Maybe he said, well, if I get too close, then I can get in trouble and then I'm not going to be able to help him. Whatever reason you can give. But the point that the Holy Spirit is highlighting here is that he was following him. But not close to him, but afar off. In other words, not too close, not completely without following him, just keeping a distance. He didn't want to be seen next to him. He didn't want to be seen close to him. He just was saying, I am following the Lord, but I am not walking close to him. I am not walking next to him, but I'm still following him. I think that Peter would say, never do that. Keep close to the Lord. Draw near unto the Lord. In fact, in his letter, 1 Peter 2, verse number 4, he said, to whom, and the word there is coming unto him, but I believe that the sense is drawing closer to him as a living stone. Let me put it in this way. We are Christians, we are saved, we are believers. And in the workplace where we are, or the place where I'm going as a student, or my family who is not saved, family members who are not saved, and so on, people in the community, I might say that I'm Christian, I go to church, or whatever you could say. But then you don't want to look like you are too fanatic. You understand what I'm saying? You try to talk a little bit like them. You try to imitate them a little bit in the way that they dress, they speak, the way that you are entertained, the way in which you spend your time. And you still come to the meetings, and you still try to, do the things that Christians do, but you don't want to be like too fanatic. Like you are not. You understand what I'm saying? 1 foot in the world, 1 foot in the sins of the Lord. trying to be a good believer when you are here and everybody's looking at me. But then when I am with the people of the world, I don't mind some of their conversations or getting involved in some of the activities. And I don't want to be, labeled as a fanatic. Peter said, I did it. I followed him afar off. I didn't want people to see me close to him. It didn't work. So first of all, he has all this self-confidence. He puts his trust in himself. Then later, he disobeyed the Lord when the Lord asked him to watch with him in prayer. And later, now he is just walking afar off from the Lord. There are not middle terms in regard to our Christian life. Or we are walking in the flesh, or we are walking in the Spirit. Or we are pleasing the Lord, or we are pleasing, not Satan, myself, my own heart, to do what I want to, what makes me happy. And Peter was saying here, well, I was walking afar off from the Lord, and that didn't work. We need to walk close to him. And you know what? Again, sir, I'm not here to try to say that, I'm glad that I'm here and I'm able to present something that has been useful to myself in my Christian life. But I have come to understand something here, that when we are so used to a routine, by the way, it's wonderful to see these halls like this today in a conference. I believe that we need to forget about that pandemic and all this restriction and go back to be together, please. Bring God's people together under the word of God. Go out and preach the gospel. It has been affected in so many places, including Australia. What I'm trying to say here is we need to try to keep close to him every day. Never feel comfortable the way that I'm trying. Because when we believe that we're doing okay, even we might begin to be in danger. So we need to come close to the Lord every day. And then we will enjoy that. We will enjoy it. That will bring joy to our hearts because we need to take this lesson from him. But I want to keep moving here. So, first of all, don't put your trust in yourself, trust in the Lord only. Secondly, obey the Lord always, even when he asks you something difficult, like keeping with him in prayer when you are very tired. And now here, keep close to the Lord all the time. Don't walk afar off from him. But then we saw at the end of the verse that he was sitting with the servants, and he was warming himself with them. In other words, the same servants that you see later in verse 65, you see verse 65, it said, some began to spit on him, on the Lord, to cover his face, and to buffet him, and to say unto him, prophesy. And the servants did strike him with the palms of their hands. So he was sitting with those men who were mocking and treating the Lord in such a shameful way. I believe that Paul will tell us, warm yourself with God's people, that you can find your fellowship, your company, your enjoyment. Here the word, he warmed himself. It was a cold night, of course. He wanted to be warm. He saw that these men were sitting in fire, close to the fire there. He said, well, what a good idea to go and sit with them. These men didn't have any fear of the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. You just read what they were doing to him later. And he just went and sat down with them. We need to go to our workplace. We need to go to university, college, and we are surrounded all the time. I love what one of the brethren said this morning. Coming to the meeting is like finding a place of rest after being surrounded of those conversations and all that attitude of people that don't have any fear of God. We need to be light in the middle of darkness. We are the salt of the world. We need to be there and to show the testimony of a Christian. Remember, a brother said to me that in Venezuela years ago, they might not know the Lord, but they will know you. They cannot see the Lord, but they should see the Lord in your life and in my life. They should be able to say, that is the way that a follower of Christ lives. And that is the devotion and the love of the Lord. and that they see the Lord in me, in you, in such a lovely way that they will be attracted to the Lord. And they will be able to say, "Where is you, beloved?" And I will go after him as well. That is what should happen. And we cannot do that if we never have contact with them. But we don't find our enjoyment in taking part with the conversation. We don't have our warmth in the coldness of this world by being there. I think Peter could say something like this: if you warm with the unsaved, you will become cold spiritually. And that what happened to him. He was warming himself with these servants that didn't have any fear of God. And later, he denied the Lord. If you want to put it this way, self-confidence, then disobedience, following the Lord on the distance afar off, later warming himself with the unsaved. And then we see what happened at the end. Enjoy the company of God's people. Not only those who are your age. Of course, it is natural for us to try to be with those who are close to our own age group. But I think that it's important to learn to relate with believers across the ages. And I am not a teenager, but I am not too old, I would like to think. Somewhere in between. I'm not even 50 yet. But I would like to say that for my younger brethren and sisters, please, when you come to a conference like this and meeting like this, not only mix with us who are of your own age group, try to reach out to the other brethren. How are you, Mr. and such, and Mrs. such and such? And lovely. You don't have to have a big conversation, but try to mix with them as well. And I would like to tell my other brothers and sisters, very respectfully, the same thing. Don't only talk among yourself. See these young people, just say, "Oh, nice seeing you here." If you don't know what is your name, where do you live, what you're doing, just a little word of encouragement. And that we can see across different groups. Not only the one that you know is very natural. For me, well, maybe you realize that around lunchtime to go and talk to the one that speaks Spanish like me and to get together, that's very easy. But try to go and enjoy the company of each other. We need each other. We do. It was a tragedy, the pandemic. Those months without being together physically, they made so much damage to us. I don't know if you heard the expression Fortress Australia. The country with the most severe restrictions in the world. Melbourne, I live in Brisbane, but Melbourne, another city in Australia, it got the world record of lockdowns. I think it was more than 300 years altogether they spent in lockdown. Not assembly meeting, no fellowship with other believers, just only the little screen there that we all have to learn to use. It was very useful, very beneficial, and we still can use it. I believe that. But it can never substitute being together. You cannot warm yourself in Christian fellowship only on the screen. You cannot shake hands on the screen. You cannot hug. Well, we're Spanish folk, we hug sometimes, but you cannot get together with people over on the screen like that. Even I heard some believers saying, "Well, look, I like the Zoom meeting because when I just want to disappear, I just turn off, leave, and that's it. And then I don't hear anybody anymore." But we cannot get that way. We cannot get used to that. We need to see each other, not only here in the meeting. We need to have fellowship when we are able to get believers in our homes, to visit others. Don't wait for someone to invite you. Invite somebody to be with you. If you don't have the facilities at your place, let's get together for a coffee. Or let's go and sit together. But we desperately need to understand that we need to warm ourselves with God's people. Because if we don't do it with them, naturally, we will start doing it with those who don't have the Lord. And again, we must be light unto them. And we need to show the Christian testimony. But we cannot have that level of fellowship, if we can use that word, talking about their topics of conversation all the time and being entertained the way that they are entertained and just following everything that they do. We need to show them that it's something much better. Not only much better, something that is the best. Being a Christian is not better than not being a Christian. Being a Christian is the only best option that you can have to be not only saved, to have God's salvation, but also to enjoy it really. I believe that. I have a very good friend at university, when I went to university in Caracas, unsaved person. Even until this day, he's not saved. He's now in Spain for many years. A lovely man, lovely person. We studied together and many things, but he knew that I was a Christian. He invited me to his parties. I said always, look, I don't need to be there. But you are my friend. He said, you know that I'm your friend and I don't need to be there drinking alcohol and getting drunk with you to show to you that I am your friend. We keep in contact from time to time. He said to me once, well, I don't understand what you believe, but I see that you are happier than me. You got something different. That's the way to try to do it. And I hope that one day he will be saved. Another friend who went to Argentina, still keep in contact with her from time to time, and something similar. So please, warm yourself with believers that they can see that you really enjoy. One over there, a new believer in Brisbane, a Colombian girl, she was invited to go with the friends outside to go to the Sunshine Coast, to the beach, on Lord's Day morning. And she called me on Sunday morning and said, well, shall I go? Because I can talk to them about the Lord. To miss the breaking of bread, to go with them to the beach, and then to talk to them about the Lord. I think that was a very poor excuse. And I said, well, the Lord said, if you love me, keep my commandments. And the Lord said, do this in remembrance of me. She went with the friends. Well, she didn't, actually, because when she was walking down the stairs, she fell off. And she broke her leg and couldn't go at all. And she called me in the afternoon from the hospital, saying what had happened. And I said, well, I am not happy that it happened, but I say that I feel a little bit of. So warm yourself with the believers. Tell them, look, I'm not going. Why? I'm going to remember the Lord. Well, if you want, maybe you don't use the word, I'm going to church, I'm going to my assembly, I'm going to be with my fellow believers, but tell them very clearly, I got something that is much better and more important. I will catch up with you any other time for a coffee. We can do some homework together, whatever you want to. But look, finally, these 4 lessons are the one I see, but just let's read very briefly here in Matthew chapter 26 again, the denial of Peter, and then I will be finished. Chapter 26. And notice something here. In verse 69, it says, now Peter sat without in the palace. Matthew 26, verse 69. It says, now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, thou also wast with Jesus of Galilee. Look at the first question. You were also with him. And he said, I know not what you say. In other words, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, you were with him. No, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're talking about. And then verse 71, and when he was gone out into the porch, another maid saw him, and said unto them that were there, this fella was also with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied, and this time with an oath, a promise. And he said, I don't know the man. First time he said, I don't know what you're saying. The second time he went a little bit further, and he said, I don't know that man. I don't know him at all. And the third time, verse 33, and after a while came unto him they that stood by and said to Peter, surely thou also art one of them, for thy speech betrayeth thee. We know that this is a reference because one of the other gospels, I believe it's Luke or John, said that his accent was like a Galilean. If you listen to my accent, well, it's Spanish with Australian, more or less. And then he said, well, he is a Galilean, so he's speaking like the people that came with Jesus. But I believe that it's more than the accent, because what he did, the next verse, then he began to curse and swear. So I believe that it's not only the Galilean accent. I believe that his way of speaking was the way of speaking as someone that has been with Jesus. And then he started to swear. He started to talk like them. He started to talk like a fisherman, like what he was before. And he was using all these swearing words and all these words. And he began to say to them very clearly, I don't know the man. And you know what happened after that? And the cock crowed. And he remembered what the Lord had said. So, Peter, what can you teach us? Well, just remember this. Trust in the Lord. Don't trust in yourself. And remember, obey the Lord, even when he's asking you something that is difficult. But also remember that you need to be close to the Lord all the time. Not only when you are in the meeting, not only when you are engaged in a spiritual sin. Keep close to the Lord. Don't walk afar off from him. And remember this, you need to warm yourself with the believers. You need to enjoy Christian fellowship. If you keep close to the Lord and you do everything here, and then you will be able to carry on with your spiritual life.